boy. If you guys knew the amount of times I've restarted this tutorial, it's insane. I happen to live by an airport, and because it's early morning on a weekday, there's a shit ton of flights, literally every 1 minute, one and a half minutes. So I'm having to keep pausing this damn video, and it's really interfering with my thoughts, my thinking. But anyway, I was up late last night because imageline posted a new version of FL Studio on the forums. So this version is 12.3, which is the next sort of mini significant update to FL. And it's not like any other 0.1 upgrade. There are a lot of changes. There are a lot of good changes. So I've been playing around with it, and I wanted to give you guys an overview of what is coming. Obviously, there's a disclaimer here in that it's the first beta release, so there may be things added, there may be things removed, changed. So please bear that in mind. You know, if you're watching this video in a week's time and there's a new beta out and something's changed, obviously I don't know that's coming, so, you know, don't hate on me for that. Apart from a ton of bug fixes, which I'll share along with the description of the video, there are what I would consider 14 changes that are worth talking about. They're not all significant changes. Some are some small menu adjustments that kind of help improve workflow. But I figured I would start with the most important first and then work my way towards the less significant at the end that are still worth chatting about. The first of which, and probably the most exciting, is, drum roll, real-time time stretching. Now, if you've dabbled with the time stretching algorithms in FL, you'll know there's maybe 7 or 8 different types. Let's have a look. So if we go under mode, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Okay, there's 11 different types. Well, in the current version of FL, there's 10. You'll notice now that there's this new stretch algorithm here. Now, the difference between resample and stretch is that resample will change the pitch along with the tempo, whereas the stretch algorithm aims to retain the relative pitch. So you're essentially just speeding up or slowing down the song whilst keeping the original notes intact, or at least the pitch values. So what I've done is I've brought in a track that I produced a long time ago, and I'm just going to show you how this works. So first things first is you need to set the tempo of the track, which I've done already. We just go time, auto detect, type in the BPM, 95, which is the BPM of the original song. Just change that quickly. Cool, okay. So that's the original tempo of the track, the original pitch values. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to slowly start increasing the tempo. Oh, damn planes. Pause it. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to let the video continue playing so you can hear the planes. Yeah, really, really annoying. Okay, and we're back. Now, how awesome is that? I've changed the pitch by 40, and there are no obvious artifacts, harmonic distortion, any ugly sound-related issues with this tempo, which is pretty amazing. So now we're going to go the other way. Now, I think you'll agree, pardon my français, but that is fucking awesome. So from a creativity standpoint, this opens up a whole new range of ideas or options you can start playing with in FL. You've got the option of creating new transition effects, whether it's in a bridge or the outro. You can, if you sample, maybe if you're a hip hop guy and you sample, I don't know, Spanish music or Brazilian music, any sort of Latino, dancehall, which tends to be much faster, you can slow it down to get a feel for how it might sound for a hip hoppy style tempo, maybe around 95, and sample from there rather than messing around with changing the pitch individually, waiting for the file to render and then hearing the change. You can actually hear it in real time. And it just makes it so much easier, and it gives you much more flexibility when it comes to experimenting, to be honest. Also, another great use of this is that if there's a particular melody or, I don't know, a set of chords or riff or phrase that you liked, but it was really fast, maybe it was an arpeggio, and you wanted to study it, you could slow that down while still retaining the pitch for you to be able to study it. This is particularly useful if you're, trying to learn a guitar riff and you want to slow it down so you can hear it. Also, if you're like me and you're not very good with being able to detect chords with your ears, you could slow it down to help with pitch detection software, plugins, algorithms. When, if you slap Melodyne or Newtone or Waves Tune onto a track, you can slow that right away down if you're only after a particular small subset of notes, rather than the plugin capturing everything. There are so many different things you can do with this. Just, when you do get hand of the beater, just have a play around. But I think you agree that imageline have really done a good job implementing this. Like I mentioned before, I didn't hear any signs of distortion or any artifacts that have been introduced with changing the tempo. So hats off to imageline, they've done a really good job. Okay, I'm going to move on really quickly because this video is going to become too long. The next feature I want to talk about, we're just going to move over to the mixer, is that, and this is going to help all you mixer guys out there, you'll notice this new padlock icon. Now this padlock icon, if you guys have used Pro Tools or any other DAW in the past, it acts as a solo safe option. Now what this means is, if for example we have a full track playing, in this instance I've got some drums, some hi-hats and a bass. So let's say we've got the hats playing and then we want to also have the bass. So what we're going to do is we're going to shift click, and you'll notice now that there's this padlock that comes up. So when I click the bass and then I right click anywhere else so that everything's playing, what happens now is if I right click anywhere, you notice how it continues to keep the bass track soloed. Let's do that with the hats. So now you'll notice that the hats aren't playing. Now that's because the hats are routed to these 3 buses that I've set up. So this is useful now where we want to solo safe the buses to make sure that doesn't happen again. So let's try that once more. And there we go. How freaking awesome is that? So this just makes mixing so much easier if you do happen to use FL Studio for mixing. Over the years, I'd really tried to do mixing in FL, but I ended up giving up because it was just too cumbersome. I moved over to Pro Tools, but maybe there is light here to potentially move back over. You never know. We'll see. All right, moving on swiftly. Workflow change number 3 is there's now a sexy new plugin manager. Not much new to see here really, other than its UI's been updated to make it look a bit more modern. You'll notice in the old version, let me just get that up quickly. This is the old version, and this is the new one. So it's not a significant change really. It just looks much better. Everything else looks kind of the same. Plugins. Yep. Okay. Nothing to see here. Talking of UI changes, there are some more vector plugins that have been ported over. Just going to leave that playing in. Okay, where do we want to go? Let's go simple list. Grows beats. Do you know what? I'm just going to pause the video and I'll get them all up now. All right, so here is Grows Beats, the Fruity Filter, Maximus, and the Limiter. I mean, come on. How sexy does Maximus look now? That looks really awesome. This isn't the full extent of the plugins that have been moved across, but I just wanted to give you an idea that there are new ones. Another notable one is Sytrus That's also been ported across to bring it in line with the other list of plugins that were vectorized as part of FL12. Okay, so that's number 4, I believe. Workflow change number 5 is you'll notice now that when you go to add, you've instantly got the list of plugins you want to add to your project, whereas before you had another sub menu. So let's bring over current version of FL. You'll see that you had to go to channel, whereas now you've got access to it straight away. It's just a small UX improvement, one less click, which is apparently important when it comes to UX. That's number 5. Number 6, we're going to move on to the channel rack. So there are 2 new changes here. You've got the auto resize. So this auto resize is the, well, you'll notice that's already in place, so I can't currently drag that down. Whereas if I now go to off, I can resize that as I want. Or if I'm really organized, I can let that do it for me. Just a small thing, but nice nonetheless. Next one is channel button width. You'll notice here that channel buttons are quite small. You know, they work, they're okay. But if you wanted them to be bigger, you now can. Look at these bad boys. There you go. Pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. Let's change that back. All right, the next one is, oh, okay. Before we move on from the channel rack, there is a new option here called receive notes from MIDI device, or as FL call it, lock MIDI notes to channels. Now, this is incredibly powerful, and I suggest you play around with it. I don't want to get into too much detail in this video, as it probably deserves one of its own, but essentially if you've got multiple MIDI controllers, you can lock a particular channel to a individual insert, which is friggin' awesome. But yeah, I suggest playing around with that. You guys with multiple MIDI keyboards, you'll see that I only have one, which is my Acco Advance, and then that's just my audio interface. So yeah, I suggest playing around with that. Next, let's move on to the piano roll. Just a quick point to note, the one on the left is the new piano roll and the one on the right is the old one. All right, so we're going to focus our attention mainly on helpers. The current version of FL, you have this note grid highlights, and you'll see here that all of the white keys are highlighted with this faint gray shadow. We turn that off, it's just empty. Whereas if you go to the new piano roll, there is what's called scale highlighting. Now what this does is it allows you to pick a root note and then an associated scale. And what that does is it will automatically highlight the notes that are in a particular scale. So what I would currently do in FL 12.2 is I would use ghost channels and then add some chords on an empty insert that kind of acts as my scale. Whereas now you can actually highlight the notes that you want to only use as part of your songwriting, which is pretty useful. There are a couple of obvious enhancements that could be made to this, which I hope FL may consider in the future, is that it's a little frustrating having to pick the note and then coming back, having to pick the key and then going back in and picking the scale. It would be useful if they kept the window open so you could pick, a multi-selection, you could pick the root note and then pick the scale at the same time. And also potentially doing MIDI lock-in, so I can only drop a note onto a particular note if it's part of the scale that I've selected, whereas now it's kind of free for all. And also it'll be useful with using something like the riff machine, is that you could lock it to the particular scale that you've selected as part of the piano roll. So it's just thinking aloud here, but this is definitely a good start. All right, so the next one is, you'll notice here we've got different views for the notes. So under view, you've got keyboard style and key labels. So we've got modern, you'll notice a very, very small subtle change there. We go to view, keyboard, go back to classic, you'll see there. Then if we go to maybe something a bit more drastic, like a list, there we go, like there. Flats and so on. Next up is the key labels, so you can label all the notes. You can do the root notes only. So if G is the root note, which is what my bass is currently tuned to. Or you can do highlighted notes as well. So yeah, just a few options. Quite small, but handy nonetheless. Okay, what have we got next? Next is... Okay, we've got 3 things left to do. One is the time stretching option. Okay, we go to here. You'll notice that if you right click on time, you've now got this project tempo option. Whereas in the existing FL, you just got auto detect. So you'd have to go to auto detect and then type in the project. Whereas here, you can just go straight to project tempo and it sets it to the project tempo. Again, just a small UX improvement that kind of speeds up your workflow. Nice. Last but not least, I know I did mention 3 new things, but one of those things happened to be a massive list of bug fixes. The last small thing I wanted to cover is underneath add. Okay, if you are, if you've got a plugin open and there's a pitch bend wheel and I wanted to automate that, I would go to options. So I'll go to tools, last tweaked, and then create an automation clip that will create a clip that would allow me to automate the pitch bend. Whereas now if you go to add, there is an option that says automation for last tweak parameter. So it's a duplication of features, but again, it's just one less menu you have to go through. You can just go to add, boom, and it's done. Automation clip created. And that's pretty much it. So just to recap, we have the real-time time stretching. We've got the solo safe in the mixer. We've got the new plugin manager, has a new UI. We've got the new vectorial plugins, including Gross Beats, Fruity Love Filter, Maximus, etc. Okay, one thing I haven't covered is there's a new plugin. Transient Processor. So this is a transient designer. And if you're familiar with transient designers, you'll know that there are a few available already. You have the SPL transient designer. There is the Native Instruments transient designer. And there's also the Sonox envelope, which is a little bit different, but it's kind of similar. Let's quickly test that out. Let's play some drums. Okay, let's increase the attack. Okay, so quickly going over the controls, you've got a frequency split knob here. You've got a bypass button. Allows you to switch the effect on and off. You've obviously got that here as well. You've got the attack. You've got the sustain, although it's called release. It's controlling the sustain. You've got an envelope, which allows you to change the different style used as part of the attack and release, which is quite nice. So just play around with those. You've then got the split balance, which is essentially a wet dry knob. I don't know why they've called it split balance, but that's what it is, wet dry. You then got a drive, which is pretty self-explanatory, and then you've got an output gain control as well. So quite a nice addition, works quite nicely, and it was definitely something that was missing from FL if you tend to use the stock plugins, but that's quite nice. All right, so we've got that I missed. We've got the going back to the recap, there is the one less click for adding a new plugin. You've got the channel rack resize, bigger button options, locking the MIDI notes to the channels, the new piano roll, keyboard styles, the new scale highlighting, the time stretching option for the project tempo, a load of bug fixes, and then the automation for the last tweak parameter. So I think you'll agree that is a lot of changes that's been introduced as part of FL 12.3. Hopefully we'll see it released soon. But until then, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope this gives you a small insight of what's coming. Any questions, hit me up in the comments below. Until next time.